Hey everyone, my name is Paul. I'm an addict. Nice to see everyone today, new faces, some old faces. Um, NAE literature on the tablets of 45,000 potential members incarcerated in Ohio. This might be a little bit of an exaggeration. This is the number of inmates. We're not quite sure yet exactly how many tablets there are that have been issued, but we have 45,000 inmates in the Department of Corrections. It's in Ohio, we call it the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, the ODRC. And how it happened, the short story is that through newly established and existing relationships with professionals in the community and with unity with other NA service bodies. We first got the email from Kelly at ODRC on January 25th saying that they were able to sign the letter of permissions and push the literature out via GTL. And again, this is pushed out for free to the inmates. There's no charge to them. They don't have to download it from kiosks. They don't have to use any money from their commissary in order to get the literature. The details is that the lockdown due to COVID really brought about the need and the creative opportunities to let our community know that we were still a resource here, that we were still active in recovery. Starting in March, with unity with other areas and zones, with help from service members in New York and Massachusetts and Kentucky, Coaskna learned how to do virtual meetings because we had no idea. I'm not technologically savvy and I'm actually quite scared of it all. But a bunch of people were willing to get on with us and kind of show us how to do it. And once we were able to establish virtual meetings, starting in April, we began calling and emailing people in the community, criminal justice and others, to let them know that we had these virtual options available so that we could still get the message of recovery out to their population. So this is just a sample email that we sent to the ODRC. This was after a cold call to them and then followed up. Her name's Melissa, and just let her know that we had the meetings going on and, if there was anything that we could do to help get the message to the incarcerated Ohioans to please let us know. Then in May of 2020, Coaskna PR and H&I began attending the Northeast Zonal Forum PR meetings where they were organizing a Criminal Justice Professionals Day scheduled for late September 2020. June through August, our H&I then decided to focus more on getting back into local facilities, and the PR subcommittee started spreading the word to professionals about the upcoming conference so that we could just be part of that kind of brainstorming during that conference about how to work with the facilities to be able to get the message out to the incarcerated population. We got an email from John at the Bureau of Correctional Recovery Services saying that he had received the email about the Professionals Day conference. And the reason I point this email out is because we never sent an email to John. John got the email, again, based on the other emails that we had sent to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, which then forwarded it on to sorry, I can't remember her name, Jennifer, Director of Holistic Services for ODRC, who then forwarded it on to John. So there was a lot of communication going on, between the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, and later with Recovery Ohio, that we weren't part of, but they were conversing among themselves about how to, help get the message to people in prisons. John and about 8 other criminal justice professionals from Ohio attended the Criminal Justice Professionals Day, and it was there during the brainstorming sessions that Coaskna PR first even heard about the possibility of getting literature on the tablets. This is not anything that we had really known about until this conference. And so after that, we contacted NAS to gather some information. And again, I want to thank Jane, who was very, very helpful for connecting us with Dodie. And then I'd really like to thank Dodie in Sarasota, Florida for kind of laying the groundwork for this. Dodie was very accessible and very helpful. and letting me know what the process was, with a letter of permissions, and, was even able then to forward on a copy of the copyright permissions letter. So I kind of knew what we needed to do here in Ohio. So based off of this, we drafted this letter to the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. And this was an attempt just to draft it for them, to make it as we know that the prison system was so overloaded with COVID and so many things, and everyone was very, very busy and working from home, and life had changed so much. So we just wanted to make it as easy on them as possible. I snipped these logos, from their websites and pasted them onto the letter, drafted the letter and sent it on. And it's actually the letter that they ended up signing that then allowed them to push the literature out. This is when I also started contacting Recovery Ohio, and I do want to say that Amy Shadwick from the governor's office of Ohio is going to share after me about what the process was like on their end, but forwarded the letter on to Recovery Ohio, along with letting them know, some information about what NA was doing. So this is just a screenshot of some website statistics. We put these up on our PR page, on our Facebook PR page, as well as on our Instagram and Twitter. So it's publicly available information that we also then shared with with Recovery Ohio, just to let them know, how much is NA being utilized by just our area. So 2,400 hits from 2,000 new users just in the month of October, and that's pretty regular for us. And then this is then communication between the ODRC and Recovery Ohio, where they're talking about the director of the ODRC having taken a look at the letter and was being on board, in concept, but just needed to work out some of the technological issues, and that Kelly and John would be reaching out to the subcommittee to see what the next steps were. And this slide is just kind of a representation of what we were doing. We were reaching out to all kinds of places, the Franklin County Drug Court, someone from there actually presented on the Professionals Day Conference, at our local university, the Colleges of Social Work and Medicine, where we do presentations, to others in the Adam H. Board's Department of Health and Clergy, also to our media contacts and to the OSU Criminal Justice Research Center. And then Recovery Ohio, Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and the ODRC. But here's again where I wanted to point out the communication that was going on between these three entities within the state of Ohio was really important, as well as our communication back and forth to them. This has already been mentioned, when we talk about ELIT being pushed out, it means that the tablet manufacturer, and in this case for the Department of Corrections, it's GTL as the tablet manufacturer for the maker for the tablets that go to the inmates in the DOC. And again, this is at no cost to NAS, to the prison system, to GTL, to COASPNA, or to the inmates. It's made available to them automatically. And I think that Amy's going to share some usage data when she's up next. And again, just this letter that came out, it was just so exciting to get after this process, and especially after having spoken a lot with Dodie, and again thanking her for laying the groundwork for this, because their process was a little bit longer than our process was. September to January is a lot less than it took Dodie to kind of lay the groundwork. So for people who are interested in doing this, some of the things we came up with was kind of do an inventory. Who do you have a strong relationship with? Who else would be supportive of your efforts? Ask them to join the endeavor and create a partnership with them and learn where they are coming from. And then think about what homework you need to do as an area or a region. And then to also not be shy to ask your contacts for introductions to people you want to meet. Right now, COASPNA is starting to work with the Department of Youth Services, which is a separate entity. They have 3 facilities for youth in Ohio that are outside of the DOC. And so Amy from Recovery Ohio was gracious enough to send an email introduction to a couple of people at DYS to help us get the ball rolling with this And then also, do cold calls, follow it up by emails or vice versa. I don't know that there's a wrong way. We usually do both. And then we follow up regularly with our contacts to tell them something that NA is doing locally or nationally, and just keeping them in the know that we're still here, addicts helping addicts stay clean. This is, and this slide deck will be made available for anyone who wants it, but to find out who supplies tablets to your particular facility or system, you can go to the GTL link here, and then you can sort up here by state, and it will tell you which facilities in your state have institutions that are supplied by GTL. One of the other major tablet manufacturers is JPay, and there's a similar link here where you can get an idea. I obviously can't guarantee how up to date this information is, but it appears to be correct for Ohio when we go in and look for Ohio. Again, our next goal is to get the e-literature on the tablets of incarcerated youth in the Department of Youth Services, and possibly a video kind of Zoom recording of an H&I panel specifically geared toward youth. So with that, I'd like to introduce Amy Shadwick from the Governor's Office Recovery Ohio Initiative, and she's going to share a little bit about what the process was like on their end, and then we'll open it up for question and answer.
Hi, everybody. As Paul said, I'm Amy Shadwick. I'm from Recovery Ohio. So first, I want to just thank you for what each of you do every day of making recovery possible in so many people's lives. So thank you for that. I want to start by just giving you a little bit of background about Recovery Ohio, and the reason that I want to do that is so that you understand within, I think, some of the earlier comments of how important it is of having a champion and finding that champion within maybe it's your city, maybe it's your county, maybe it's your state, maybe it's your country. But just for by way of background, Recovery Ohio actually sits within the governor's office in Ohio. So when Governor DeWine took office in 2018, he actually established the Recovery Ohio Initiative. The Recovery Ohio Initiative is all about making Ohio a more recovery-friendly state, regardless of if that's for people who are seeking treatment, people who are in recovery, or family members who are helping to, maybe get their loved one into treatment. So it starts all the way up with the governor within the state of Ohio, and something that he really cares a lot about. So the way that it's structured, and again, I don't want to bore you with too many details, but I want to connect a few of these dots because it gets into how we were able to work with NA here in Ohio to make this possible. Is the Recovery Ohio Initiative actually has an advisory council of external members. And those external members came together and actually created a report, and it includes recommendations of some things that the state could consider to help make Ohio a more recovery-friendly community. One category within that report is related to criminal justice, and one recommendation in particular is making sure that treatment and recovery supports are available and enhanced to people while they are incarcerated. And so really what we do within the context of Recovery Ohio then is we have the council. They created this report that have the recommendations, and then we have subcommittees. So there's actually a criminal justice subcommittee who actually actions and moves some of these recommendations forward. So as Paul was talking and he was sharing with you about Kelly, and John. Those are actually two of the people who are part of the Recovery Ohio Criminal Justice Subcommittee. Kelly in particular is the co-chair of that subcommittee, and Kelly's at the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, and John is at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. So one of the things that's really important is that ongoing communications that's going on within our agencies, within the governor's office, of everyone really trying to move these shared priorities forward. So I really wanted to give you a little bit of context of within Ohio, how it's structured, and also I'll talk in a minute of some keys here, because I've heard a few comments that I don't want folks to feel like if maybe this isn't situated within your governor's office or within your sheriffs or some of your elected officials. I think there's still other ways that you can take some of the things that were applied within some of your colleagues' experiences to still make it work within your community. So really, what it gets down to from the Recovery Ohio perspective was when NA reached out to us, it was really easy for Recovery Ohio to champion this within our state agencies and encourage the directors of those state agencies to consider this. We know that NA has traction in our community. We know it's a valuable recovery support, and we want everyone to have access to it. And I think one of the silver linings here, as Paul alluded to, is COVID-19 was really an opportunity for people to be able to think about things differently and maybe approach things in a creative way, maybe different than we in I will own, we in state government may not always be willing to do, or we might not be as nimble or be as open to doing it as quickly. And so I think NA did a great job of the timing of the outreach as well, in saying this is something that we can do, and we can do it now for COVID, during COVID, to make sure that we're supporting people in the recovery, because things are looking very different of what we're able to do, especially within the prison systems in Ohio. They did really have to lock down and prevent a lot of that in-person interaction. So this was a great alternative that I think, again, we really want to make sure that folks were maintaining their recovery, and this was a great way to think about it. So just quickly, Paul mentioned, and I know there was a question, we actually did, they don't do extensive tracking, but they do look on the devices to see the information that's downloaded. And so I was able to get clarification. It is right, it usually is about 45,000 inmates, and they all do have access to their own individual tablets. And I mean, we are quite impressed that since this just started in January, almost all, there's 6 pieces or five pieces of NA literature that was made available on the tablets. And each of them, I would say, give or take, I can share the exact numbers if you're interested, but give or take, all of those have been accessed by 25,000 unique individuals who are incarcerated. So we find that to be a great example that shows that this is really needed, it's really valuable, and again, that people are using it. So I'll just end with, and then again, happy to also participate and answer questions, but to know that I do not have all of the great insight that Arlene had into the actual technology. I am more from the relationship perspective and making some of those connections to advocate it forward, but happy to answer questions. But I'll leave you with, as you think about doing this, within, again, your entity, whatever that may be, small or large. As you've heard and probably will continue to hear, relationships are key. So find a champion, and that might be somebody different in every community, but there certainly is a champion. We all have experiences, and you just need to find that champion. And if you haven't started establishing those relationships, start doing that outreach, as Paul said, cold call, reach out across different organizations and connect with folks. Because again, there's a champion somewhere. You just have to find that person. Coupled with that, be persistent. I know Dodie talked about that perseverance and being patient. So I'd encourage you to be persistent. Sometimes within, from our perspective, state government, something we were really excited about, really want to make happen, still have to work through all the contractual things, all the legal things, the copyright things. So sometimes it takes a little longer than we might want it to. But again, find that champion, be persistent. And then the last thing I would say, as Paul said, make it easy. Make it as easy as possible. So again, the NA team that we worked with here in Ohio, they drafted the letters for us. They shared other templates. They made it as easy as possible so that if this was something that folks wanted to get behind, as Paul said, it literally was as easy as them getting this reviewed and the directors signing on the dotted line. So I really appreciate you allowing me to be here with you today. And I will also offer up, as you're having the conversations, as we talk about relationships, if it's helpful, as you're having conversations within your governments, whether it's local, state, or federal, and if you think it would be helpful for some of your partners to talk to someone in government who's championed this, who's really seeing the impact, please feel free to use me as a resource. Paul has my information. I'll also drop my name and my email address in the chat, but know that that's something that I would love to make those connections and help champion. I will share with you that I do have a loved one in recovery, and he's approaching his 3 years of sobriety here in the next few months. And I know that it is that NA has played a large role in his recovery. So again, it's something that both personally and professionally I care a lot about, and I'd love to be a resource and help even more people. So I'll drop my email, and I will stop chatting, and happy to answer any questions that I can answer.
All right, thank you. All right, guys, so we got some time here. We're gonna open it up for some questions for either Paul or Amy, and we'll start with John F.
Hey, hello again. Amy, thank you for letting NA into your institutions. I'm from Cleveland, so I have a pretty good understanding of the Ohio penal system. My one question was, you were talking about the items that are on the iPad and how are they viewed? Do you have statistics on like which ones viewed the most or the least? I know that you said 5 or 6 items are on there, but I didn't, you gave us a number in, a general of all 6. Do you have information?
Yeah,
on,
I
like,
can.
Go ahead.
I do. Yeah, I can read those off for you really quickly. So the one that is most opened is the NA White Booklet. Since this has been started in just January, there's been 25,307 unique individuals. So that's the thing that's important. What we're looking at is unique individuals who have downloaded the content. So what we don't know, which I think would be valuable, but again, balancing how much we're tracking it, is how many times they go back and view it. But that's the one that's been viewed the most. But as I've said, so there's Behind the Walls. That one's been viewed 24,963 times. Self-Acceptance, 24,380. Staying Clean on the Outside, 24,646. And The Triangle of Self-Obsession, 24,792. So they're all very, very close, all right around 25,000 unique people that have opened each those content. So I talked to our director Alicia Nelson, who leads the Recovery Ohio initiative, and I was just telling her about these numbers that we saw last week, and she just was really inspired and thought that it's, really does speak to the need and how valuable this is to help people on the recovery journey.
Real quick to this, as Amy mentioned, if I'm a unique visitor, I'm counted once in that 25,000, even if I've opened it every single day since January 25th. I'm still only counted as one person, one unique visitor. So hopefully we'll be able to get some information at a later date on that, but if not, still those numbers are really pretty good. That's more than half of the tablet holders have access to the information so far.
Yeah, that's excellent, because you don't know if they're looking at it or reading it every day. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, my background is marketing and communications, and I will tell you that if I ever sent out or gave access to people and we had over a 50% open rate, I'd probably be sitting in the Caribbean in a mansion somewhere. So this is really, really impressive.
Thank you. All right, Jeff W.
Yeah, hi, I am Jeff W. and I am an addict. And let me just give a blanket thank you to everyone involved, everyone, the people putting this on, everybody on both sides, NA, corrections or corrections and rehabilitation. This is great. And I'm glad Amy followed Paul, because he talked about Recovery Ohio a few times. So I'm going, what the hell is Recovery Ohio? And now I know. And really, thank you, Amy and Arlene, particularly for being here. But this question, I think, is more for Paul and maybe Dodie. So, Paul, did Dodie pave the way with respect to NAS and the copyright issue? So, if we came in from Southern California and we were doing a similar project, kind of modeled after this, and showed them that it's just like these other ones that you've already okayed, is that one of the reasons your process was so much shorter than it was for Dodie, because she had to start from scratch and really pave the road there? You understand my question?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, getting the letter of permissions, the copy from Dodie, that was really helpful because it gave me something to draft a letter off of to send to the officials in Ohio. And I think, just understanding the process better, certainly helped. And
also we changed. I mean, it was kind of like surrendering that the basic text and the just for today wasn't going to get on anytime soon. So we kind of transitioned into public information from NA.org. And that was our stance, that this is our literature. It's for public viewing. No one's going to, download it and print it and sell it. It's just for the inmates so that they have something to turn to, And so we surrendered the basic text and just for today. That was what took so long, is that we were kind of, trying to get that onto the tablets. And then when the pandemic hit, we kind of transitioned our thinking and went to the NA.org. I think that's where so.
Thank you.
All right, Simon.
Hi, my name's Simon. I'm from London in the UK. I'm in the Public Relations Committee in the UK region. I want to thank everyone for putting this on, and thank you, Amy, for spending your time doing this. And I worked in the sector for a little while, and one of the things that was interesting is how many of our champions have, primary and secondary addiction. They have friends or family who have experience of NA, personally, and it's one of the reasons why there's such a powerful investment. So thank you for your time. In the UK, we're in a rather different situation, but we have started working along these lines. And what we're doing at the moment is we're producing filmed Zoom meetings, which are geared very specifically to inmates, that will be allowed to be shown to inmates in groups. there is the facility for that to happen in prisons. When I heard about what Ohio were doing and what Florida did before, it's really exciting. And I've tried to encourage members of our H&I committee to pick this up. I think they feel it's rather a long way away from them in terms of achievability at the moment. We have a rocky relationship with our criminal justice system, especially our prison system in the UK. But you know, this is really useful, and what I hope to be able to do is show them some of this and encourage maybe some meetings. And I was thinking maybe you know, we could ask the guys from Central Ohio to present to UK H&I at some point and explain, you know, how this has happened. I mean, I think part of people's issues tend to be they don't see how to get from here to there. And seeing this, I like the way that you laid out the letters. I thought it made it very accessible and really easy to see how this is possible. This is a very big ask for the UK. I think it's an extraordinarily exciting, the idea that 25,000 people have seen our literature who may not have seen it otherwise is breathtaking. And, you know, a huge applause to you. And I will do my best to try and carry this over the pond and make it happen over here. I think this is a really exciting thing, and I'm really glad I turned up today. Thank you.
Okay, we got a few more minutes if anybody has any more questions.
I'd like to offer a clarifying bit of information that's not in the slides. That was because Amy mentioned that she's more on the relationship side and you know how the process worked. So there was a moment of confusion for me when I was working with ODRC, when it was clear that I also needed to work with the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, because the ODRC contracts out this type of process to OMAS. Even though they're both government agencies, even though they're both within the state of Ohio, Kelly herself cannot move forward from the ODRC without sign off from someone like John at OMAS. So they both had to be signers on the letter. And Jane has said that we can change up the kind of literature that we have on the tablets and maybe put on the, she said that we can put on an audio version of the 5th edition of the basic text and such. But any kind of alterations like that still need to be worked through with both of those entities in Ohio, the Department of Corrections via Kelly and the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services via John.
All right, thank you. Wilvina?
My name's Wilvina from the Northeast Zona Forum PR. My question has to do with the advisory council report that you talked about and that recommendation process. We're actually looking to start working a little more closely with government agencies. And I'm wondering, you talked about these criminal justice subcommittees. When they collect their recommendations, is it possible that Narcotics Anonymous public relations people either can observe these subcommittee meetings or get access to these reports, or in some way, how does Central Ohio participate with these criminal justice subcommittees that do this referral process to the government's office?
So I can start, Wilvina, and then Paul, if there's anything you want to add from your perspective. So I can actually drop in the chat the initial report that includes all of the recommendations. As you can imagine, it's quite extensive. There's 75 recommendations, but again, hit on all different areas. And there is one section that's related to criminal justice. I actually joined the Recovery Ohio team after the report had already been created. So I actually can't speak exactly to the formulation of the recommendations, except to say, I know broadly speaking, they brought together a lot of external stakeholders to put together the recommendations. And then the subcommittees are predominantly those internal folks that Paul's been referencing. So all of the state agencies are actually the leads of those subcommittees to make sure that they're moving the work forward. But again, to that same piece, when there's a recommendation that deals with whatever, there's a whole bunch that deal with housing in particular. So they'll bring in a whole bunch of stakeholders from outside of state government to give input into those recommendations. So it's something that from our perspective, we're always looking for that input and that two-way communication. So I'll drop a link to our recommendations if that's of interest to you and other folks. You're willing to take a look. And then again, if there's more questions about our process within the council and the subcommittees and how we're moving this forward, I'm always available to chat more about that. And I did drop my email address in the chat. And Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add in terms of your experience with John and Kelly. And I don't know if you even knew that connection between the Recovery Ohio Criminal Justice Subcommittee and Kelly co-chairing that. And she also co-chairs, the Attorney General also has a mental health task force, and Kelly co-chairs that task force as well. So again, she's just an amazing champion, and I did invite her to join us today, but she had a family member that just had surgery, so she wasn't able to join today, but she was you know, more than happy to share the hits with me and again be a resource as people need that moving forward.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Amy.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
We really appreciate you being here and sharing with us.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.